Michael Holt, you are a singer-songwriter and a musician and a guitarist based here in Copenhagen. And I would like to welcome you to York Avenue Productions. Uh, Michael Holt? Mr. Holt,
What?
you,
Where am I?
you're at York Avenue Productions, and I would like to welcome you here. You came for an interview.
Wait, what? Okay.
Good, thank you. You are a guitarist, a singer-songwriter, and a musician, and
I am?
that's what we know about you, and that's what you've told me, and we're really happy to have you here.
All right, thank you.
Good. Could you tell us what was your first experience with writing a song, and tell us something about how you did that?
Well, first of all, I started out playing music when I was a kid, about, I don't know, I must have been 8 or 9 or something like that. And I started out on the clarinet. And I was in this orchestra for kids, and we were playing, "Oh, when the Saints" and all of those songs. But it must have sounded really terrible. But I got the sheets with like the notes handed to me, and instead of reading the sheets, I was just like copying what I heard the guy next to me do. So from the beginning, I learned by ear, and this learning by ear also meant that I already from the start started composing like little melodies on the clarinet. Um, so as soon as I actually touched an instrument, uh, in some, I don't know, unconscious way or something like that, I already started to um, write, you could say. I started to improvise. And I played with my dad. He played the piano, and I played the clarinet. And we had a little bit the same. He was playing the melody, and I was kind of copying it. And this copying by ear kind of thing, uh, kind of taught me the relationship between the notes in a certain sense. And so I started like playing around with that. And so this is all to say that it's a little difficult for me to say when I first started composing, because the entire time that I've been playing music, I have been composing.
All right, so you saw music as a way of putting things together in your own way.
Well, I think it's an extension of play, really, children's play to a certain extent, and I don't think at that time that I would really have distinguished it from children play
Oh, really interesting.
in any way. And I still today think that I really don't distinguish it to a certain extent. And I mean, I would, of course, in a sense, put a lot of of adult activity into that category as something which is a natural extension of child's play, but which in the adult world is taken seriously, maybe too seriously to a certain extent, right? And so I think music was really the vehicle for teaching me that lesson, that, you know, um, there's like a continuous activity from childhood until now. And when does it stop being play and start being something else?
I suppose play is creative too, right? Like children, when they play, they create and
Cer-
imagine different things.
Certainly it is. I mean, play is for sure is creative. I think play really gets to be more and more creative with time. I think there's like a naive way of looking at it, which is which is what a lot of adults have because of like a romanticization of play and also of childhood
Right.
to to a certain extent, which is the naive way of looking at it is that play, you know, the closer you get to childhood, the more creative it is.
Right.
I don't think that's necessarily true. But I do think that there are moments of immense creativity in childhood, and really those moments occur when like social roles start to be differentiated.
Right.
And I think that music has very much, you know, the potential for social interplay, and it's also very much about social interplay. So in that sense, I think music is just an extension of play, but not only an extension, but it is play in its nature.
Well, this leads nicely to the next question, which is, how do you see the relation of music to other art forms?
Oh, well, it's interesting there, because of course music has a relation to other art forms in terms of the way in which art is about some kind of expression to one in some way or another. I know it's like a banality to say when I just express myself through music, man, and stuff like that. Yeah. But in a way that is absolutely true. You know, if we were to conceive of silence in the same way that we conceive of an like the spots in an unfinished painting, or the white places in the painting, right? Then we could conceive of an unfinished work in the same way that we can conceive of the unfinished painting, where the painting is about space, filling out space, and time doesn't enter into the finished product as much. Where music is about time, it's a temporal thing. You know, like you can paint over something, and therefore, when you watch the painting, you watch it in a moment of time, but it doesn't change over time. No. You know, well, I guess it changes over a long period of time in the degradation of the colors, but that's not the point.
No, it's in the observation of it.
It's in the observation of it, you know. And this observation is kind of supposed to be the freezing of a frame, you know, yeah. And an awareness of the spatial qualities of the painting, which enter into each other in ways which boggles the mind, so to speak, right? Yeah. And music does the same thing with time. A note has a relationship to other notes, and it is both in relation to the notes to the note that comes directly after it and the note that comes directly before it, but it also has a relation or function in the whole piece, in the piece of the whole. So it's, in a sense, music is taking an amount of time and having that as the frame. That's how I see it, at least. But of course, now we're touching upon something which I think is general with art, but I think also is true with music. It's very difficult to define it in like general, in the universal terms. You know, I think it is, and I automatically have to move on to the topic of how to define music, you know, if we're talking about art in that sense. I think the only way I could really come up with a definition which is universal, if there even is such a thing, is to say that music is sound which is generated by human beings in a in an activity over history, and it is sound that is generated with an intention of creating music. The intention of creating music is perhaps the most important feature of music itself. And well, you could argue that, okay, birds, sing in a way. So isn't that music, right? And I would say that actually, in a way, that no, it isn't. Because I don't think that birds, conceive of what they're doing as music, in the same way that human beings conceive of what they're doing as music, meaning that it has specific historical meanings.
Well, the obvious question here then is, I can have an intention to produce a sound, but it could just be noise.
Yes.
So what's the distinction between music and noise?
Well, there is a music genre called noise. There's even one called harsh noise. And in this sense, I guess I have kind of a democratic approach to this. I'm saying, who am I to come along and say that this is not music? I think there is an intention produced. That I think an example which is more relatable to people, although not much more relatable to people, is free jazz. Free jazz is a cacophony of all kinds of chaotic expressions that have lost all kind of structure to it, right? But it is, I have been to free jazz concerts and I have enjoyed free jazz concerts. I've actually also been to noise concerts and enjoyed noise concerts. And what I think is interesting about it is the playfulness of a free jazz concert, for example. It's extremely playful because they don't care about rules or, putting things into structure, melodic structure.
They don't care if it sounds good.
Well, sounding good is... Here we come into something which I think is very interesting about music, is music as classically conceived is about beauty. And I don't think music is about beauty. I think some music is about beauty, but I think I love metal, and I even love extreme forms of metal. But I would never say that, when I'm hearing some death metal band being like, like that, that I would never be like, oh, that's really beautiful. It's about something else. It's about expression and embracing the whole spectrum of human emotional expression, and not only emotional, but of course, even cognitive things. And I wouldn't limit it to just emotions per se. Music. I think there's a lot. Doesn't make any sense to have lyrics in music if it's just about emotions, right? You also want to convey a meaning, and you want to think about things, and you can't say that the thing that you the thing that you communicate with the lyrics, that it isn't also cognitively. It's not just emotional. You have to think about it and so on. And that's all. You can't say that that's not a part of the music as well, So my idea of music is really very, very inclusive, except for pop music. That sucks. No, I'm kidding. But am I? Well,
Country and Western?
Some good country out there. I mean, but now I'm making, subjective. But if I like opinions, right? My subjective opinions. But if I was to really talk about music in that sense, I think it's really all about intention.
Who are your influencers in music? Like, who have you looked up to, and who have really
influences or influences?
The people who have influenced you.
Okay, yeah. I think, well, there's so many to talk about, but I will single out a
Yeah,
few,
give us the main one.
even if it does reduce my
Credibility?
yeah, no, not credibility, but I would say it kind of well, it's silly to talk about it like that, but it does, you know, it does for a musician. The thing is not to be associated too closely with other musicians, right? It's this thing we have, which I think we want to call it integrity, but it's not really. You know, like it's just. I guess it's just some kind of insecurity, really. And it comes down to. I think a lot of musicians are insecure about what they do, and I don't think that stops with. You can give us as many compliments as possible. But anyway, back to the topic at hand, which is influences. The reason why I started playing the clarinet, which I don't anymore, was jazz music. My father always listened to jazz and classical music, and at that point, I wanted a saxophone, but I guess my parents were kind of like, it's noisy. Clarinet was cheaper also, so I got a clarinet. And I was content with that in the beginning, although I didn't practice that much, to be quite honest, right? And but I had good ear for it, and my father helped me because we were playing together and stuff, and we were playing like Duke Ellington and Count Basie, like very very early jazz, like the big band stuff. And so I guess I would say that those are actually my first influences in music. So that early jazz. But then something happened. Like my mother had this CD, because my mother had a little bit of a different taste from my father in music, and well, my father also liked rock music, but my mother, for her, it was a main thing, and for my father, jazz was the main thing, right? So she put on like a little record, not very well known record, called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band by the Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and this you know kind of obscure record from the 60s. It immediately spoke to me, even though I must have been like 7 at the time or something. There was just something about that which I just loved it, you know, to a much larger extent than I had loved jazz beforehand. And so and so that was an influence on me from very early on. And then Jim Morrison and the Doors was the next CD, I think. Jimi Hendrix was the next. Then I got a CD with the greatest hits of, well, I got a few bands from the 60s like that, but I got one with the greatest hits of, what's her name? The very famous singer who, you know, me and Bob McGee and
Bobby something?
Chain. Yeah, anyway, that doesn't matter, but there's a lot of like 60s stuff.
Is that when
rock.
you went over to guitar, when you started hearing these records?
No, actually, it took me a while to get into the guitar. I must have been about 13, 14 when I first got an acoustic guitar.
Okay.
And I think the reason why I was interested in that was Jimi Hendrix, quite, because he quickly just became my absolute favorite. and I think has always been, in many ways, my absolute favorite. Now I have subjectively, now I have a more measured view of, you know, that there are geniuses that are just as um, good as Jimi Hendrix, but he still has a special, like John Coltrane or someone like that, right? But he still has like a very special place in my heart, for sure, and is still, because he is really what propelled me to pick up the guitar, and then when I got an electric guitar, he is the reason why I really started practicing.
All right. And you got a Stratocaster.
Yeah, when I was 17,
Right.
I think. And that's when I mean, when we were talking about, to go back to to former question, right? When we were talking about making songs, right? That's when I started making rock songs, kind of. I had made like melodies on the clarinet before,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't. I wouldn't say that they were complete songs. They were melodies, fragments.
Yes.
So yeah, and when I started playing guitar, actually, what was really interesting is I wasn't playing like Hendrix style guitar from the get go, because there was this musician that was a friend of my sister's, that came to visit us on a summer holiday in France. We had a house in France at my parents, right? And he knew a little guitar. He was a drummer, but he knew a little guitar, and he taught me. He taught me a very simple flamenco thing. So when I started playing guitar, it was actually, I started playing kind of flamenco, kind of Spanish stuff. But I didn't really know how to play it. I was just deducing from the few things that he had taught me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just made up stuff that sounded similar to that kind of. And then it was like, there's a lot of blues. I started playing blues as well, and the 60s rock kind of thing. So for a long time, the influences that converged in my guitar playing were kind of like blues, flamenco, and rock music.
Where do you see your music going from here?
Well, right now, I mean, I have a few projects going on. I have like a rock project, which is going on, which is kind of a mixture between a lot of different rock genres that I've played over the years. Um, I would say that it's kind of eclectic, though I would also say that it integrates all of these things into a more coherent whole. But so I have that going on, and that's something I intend to continue because rock is, well, it's very close to my heart, and it will continue to be a mode of expression for me. And then the second thing, I have a folk project, which is my own songs, which I have been writing for a long time, and that really started when I heard people like Nick Drake and Jackson C. Frank. And although I'd been interested in rock for a long time, in folk for a long time, through like the typical influences, Bob Dylan and Neil Young and all of these people, but the thing that really put that in motion for me was the English folk, more like depressed folk guys like Nick Drake and Jackson C. Frank, and because that gave an outlet for that kind of melancholy, beauty kind of thing, and now I am kind of learning slowly to play jazz. I've learned some gypsy jazz, and I'm learning that more to integrate it as an influence into the other music. But I think I'm always trying to expand my sonic palette, so to speak, and so I'm integrating more and more influences into my music. Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, that sounds very exciting, and we look forward to seeing how things go, and we'll be keeping our ears to the airwaves to hear your new productions.
Yes.
And we wish you all the best, and thank you so much for coming.
Rock out.
Thank you.